In times of trauma and adversity, we must create space for connection by sharing a story of hope. Welcome to Humans of Hope, Inspiring Stories, hosted by Kerry Atherton. This podcast shares inspiring stories of individuals who have faced significant challenges and emerged stronger, offering hope and resilience to listeners all over the world. Join Kerry, the founder of Stories of Hope Worldwide, every week to hear these remarkable journeys and find the strength to overcome your adversity. Now, let's listen in to this week's conversation.
Welcome to another episode of Humans of Hope. Today's guest is Madeleine Black. Madeleine is the survivor of a sexual assault at just 13 years of age by two men where she was left for dead. Her raw story is not one only of trauma, but of great resilience and the hope that she has found today. Today she is an advocate against sexual violence, and she is an inspirational speaker and an author of the book Unbroken. She is also one of the bravest women that I know. Welcome, Madeleine.
You're welcome, Kerry. And it really moves me you say that I'm brave, because I don't really want to be brave. I want it to be normal that we can speak about these difficult stories. Brave is a weird word, but I get it. Thank you.
You are so brave, and I really am so thrilled that you're speaking up about this, because as we've discussed before, this is a topic which has also affected me in my own childhood, and it's great that we have advocates like yourself who are willing to bear their scars so that others can heal. So, Madeleine, could you please take us back to that day when your childhood, as you knew it, changed forever?
Sure. So I was just 13 years old. It was the late 1970s. And I had a friend at school. And, she was one of these people in the class that everybody wanted to be. She was really cool. She had the best clothes and she wore makeup, which I wasn't allowed to do. She had really funky shoes. And she asked if I wanted to go on a night out. And home at that time was a bit tricky. My mum was bedridden for a few years and we had people looking after us. My dad was working. I'm one of five. And I guess it was a bit of escapism. So I said yes. And her mum was away. She was meant to be with her grandma and I was obviously meant to be staying at my mum's, but we both lied about where we were staying and we had her mum's empty flat to stay at. Somehow, I don't know how, but we managed to buy a bottle of vodka, which I have never, ever drunk again. Even the smell of it makes me, can't go near it. And we took it to a local cafe in North London where we mixed it in secret and we drank it. Now, obviously, I had never drunk before. I was just this little skinny 13-year-old girl. And it didn't take me long to get drunk very quickly. And I was chucking up all over the place. And then we were kicked out. And there was a collection of people on our table. Her dad was an American, and it seemed to be where lots of Americans hung out. So two of the American young boys that were on our table left at the same time, and they put us into a taxi, which took us back to her mum's empty flat. And, I've often really thought about the taxi driver from that day, because the assault was already starting in the back of the taxi, but he just chose to be a bystander. He could have been an upstander and done something to intervene, but he chose to ignore what was happening. He was only concerned that I wouldn't throw up again, and he wanted, obviously, just to get me there as quickly as possible. By the time we arrived at the flats, the alcohol was taking effect, and I was literally legless, and they just kind of, dragged me up 4 flights of stairs, bumping my legs all the way up. And when we got inside the flat, they put us into separate rooms. And I just thought, well, they're going to take me out of clothes. I've been sickened, put me in the bed and let me sleep off the alcohol. But it became very clear that they were there for something else. And really, it's very odd, what takes place when you are being raped by two men. I realize now that my mind, it just kicked in automatically, but it focused on everything apart from them. So to start with, I was focusing on a barbecue that was taking place down in the communal gardens. It was April, May time, so it would have been a bank holiday. And I could see people and children, and I'm lying there wondering what they're eating whilst these men are violating my body. And then my attention came into the room, and I noticed, as I was still avoiding them, that there was this wallpaper border that ran all the way around the top of the walls, which was made out of pink and grey bows. And I spent a lot of time counting, and I counted these bows just over and over and over again. So every wall had 11 bows, and there were 44 bows in total, which is a number really that I still see everywhere to this day. It just kind of follows me all over the place. But after a while, really, the violence escalated, and the counting didn't really do it for me anymore. And I kind of describe it as being kicked out of my body. So at one point, I was on top of the wardrobe watching, and I was also down on the floor. So it was very surreal. But now I understand, because I've worked as a psychotherapist for many years, that when we do have a big trauma, we have to get out of the way. And I think if I'd stayed in my body, then I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have survived it. Really near to the end, the one that I call the worst one, he threatened me with a knife, and he told me if I spoke about it, that they would find me and they would kill me. And then they put me back in the bed and left. So a huge chunk of what took place, I didn't really have memories for it. I woke up the next morning, and my girlfriend is now in the bed next to me, but it was very different. She was dressed. I was naked. She appeared not to have been touched at all. And I had loads of injuries on my body, and I didn't really understand, where they had come from. I remember jumping in the bath, scrubbing my body as much as I could, really till it was red raw. And then I got dressed, and we both decided not to speak about it, because already, I was thinking to myself, well, I had lied to my parents, I'd met boys, I'd bought alcohol, and all those victim blaming messages, which I wasn't even aware of as a 13-year-old in the late 1970s, came to me. What did I expect? I brought this on myself. This was my fault. I don't even know how I knew these things, but the guilt was just huge. So then we went our separate ways. And then the following day was a school day, Monday. We went back to school. I tried to pretend as if nothing had happened, but I know now that it's really hard, because even if you don't speak about it, your body finds a way for it to come out somehow. And I think what we don't speak about leaks out of us, and it leaked out of me just in tons of ways. I developed eating disorder. I became anorexic. I used drugs and alcohol to numb out and forget. I had fears, phobias, anxieties. I hated myself. I was full of self-loathing, and I didn't really understand the point to being alive or being me. And one day I just went to my mum's bathroom cabinet and swallowed handfuls of pills to hopefully end my life, which obviously didn't happen and didn't work. But when I woke up in hospital, I didn't even know that they had pumped my stomach out, because I was unconscious already. And I just thought that I was just a loser. I couldn't even kill myself. I couldn't even get that part right. Now I'm very grateful, obviously, that I am alive. But it was a really dark time in my life. It was really tough. And it got worse because my mum discovered that me and my friends were smoking a lot of dope. So she did the worst thing that any parent could possibly do. And she rang all of my friends' parents to let them know exactly what we were up to. And nobody was speaking to me at school. Nobody wanted to know me. We all got into so much trouble. They decided, or they just suggested to me, maybe it might be a good idea to go away for some time. And it had been miserable, because what I forgot to say was that after about 3 years that it happened, I still couldn't speak what had happened, but I was coming home late one night, and my mum is waiting for me. She never normally waits me, and she's really, really angry. And she's telling me that I could be putting myself into danger. She's telling me this while she's shaking me in the hallway, that I'm risking stuff. What do I think I'm doing? And inside my head, I'm trying to find the way to articulate what has already happened, but I couldn't. So I wrote this note, which I left on my pillow. And the next day, when I came home from school, both of my parents are waiting for me. My dad asked me if it was true, and I said yes. But the other girl involved, who was there that night, when they called her, said it hadn't happened like it had. I said it had happened, that they were nice boys. They were both sons of diplomats, and that I'd got it wrong. So my dad still wanted to go to the police, and my mum was really quiet. And it took me years to understand my mum's silence. I didn't understand it. It was only many years later, after my dad had passed. They were married for nearly 40 years, had 5 kids, and he never knew that as an 8-year-old, my mum had been raped by her neighbor, by her friend's dad. So every time my grandma would send her to play with her friend, this man would rape my mum. So she was able to tell her brother, who told my grandparents. But whilst he was in prison, he was charged. He was also found to be abusing his daughters. My mum's family moved away and they never spoke about it again. So when I am confronting her with my story, she couldn't say anything because all of her unprocessed trauma just silenced her. But in that moment, I thought, well, my friend has betrayed me and my mum doesn't believe me. So when I get to the point a few years later when they suggested going away, I just thought, yeah, what have I got to lose? So I did. I went to Israel for a year and I loved it because nobody knew about my past. And as you know, with trauma, we can diminish it and undermine it and push it far, far from our consciousness and just pretend it didn't happen. And during my year, near to the very end, about a month before the end, I met Stephen, who is now my husband. I met him a few years ago. It's about, I don't know, 37 years ago, I think next month, quite a few years. But he was the first person that I felt safe with, and I really just trusted him. And over time, I really saw that he loved me and I couldn't understand why, because my opinion of myself was so low. I had no self-belief, no self-worth, no self-respect. But he still wanted to see me when we came back from Israel. He lived in Scotland and I was in London. And I would just drive him mad, saying, why? Why do you want to spend time with me? You could be with anyone. And he would just stay, from a very grounded place that he just does. So over time, I saw that I was lovable and I could let love in and then I could give love out. And, I just think love is always going to be the way. Love will always win over hate. And actually, it wasn't planned at all, but I had my tea today. I have yogi teas and my little label says, love is the ultimate law of life. And I'm not making it up. Look, there you go. So that was very apt, isn't it? I just mentioned love. And so we got back to UK, and after about 5 years, he asked me to marry him. And obviously, I said yes. But initially, I thought I could never become a mum because I thought the idea of giving birth was just going to be like being raped again. And I just thought, I can't do it. But I came up with a plan one day, which I call my best revenge. And that was to become a mum. And not only that, but be determined, to live my life as best as I can. I just refuse to be identified by what had happened. And there's a long, long journey of my healing. And that really started my healing journey. And I really thought I was okay. I thought motherhood had healed me. Looking back, I know I wasn't. And I'll be here forever if I go into all the many ways it affected my life. But there was a huge turning point when Anna turned 13. I went on to have 3 girls. So luckily I got over that fear of childbirth. And all of my nightmares came back, all the flashbacks, all the memories. And at first I really thought that I was just going mad. I thought if it was so bad, I would remember that. Now I understand it's because it was so bad, my mind shut it off. And it was like a jack in the box. I've been stuffing these memories deep, deep down inside. But now this lid had sprung open and I just couldn't close it anymore. So I decided to go back to therapy again. I was the worst kind of client because I said, I don't want to see these pictures. I want you to take them out of my head, take them away, which obviously he can't do. I realize now that your memories, your dreams, nightmares, flashbacks, they come back when you're ready to face them, whether I believe that or not, because I didn't believe it for a long time. I thought I'd actually made a lot of this stuff up. So my journey really was actually fighting with myself. It wasn't the pictures themselves that were causing me the damage. It was my refusal to accept and to believe. I was so caught in denial. But then I saw, if I don't accept what was done to me, I could actually drive myself crazy with this denial, because the more I denied it, the faster and harder and quicker these memories would come to me. I'd see them. They'd wake me up at night. I imagined walking down the street. I could see these men everywhere, even though I was now in Scotland and I imagined they're back in America. So I could really drive myself crazy. So I got to a point where I thought, okay, this did happen. I'm not my body. I'm not the things that they did to me. I'm so much more than the sum of one night. None of us are our events in our life. We're all so much more. And I had about 3 years of therapy with this therapist, a guy called Ron. And very near to the end, he suggested something to me which just rocked my world. I couldn't believe what he was saying. I was just fuming with him. And he made a suggestion. He said, maybe they weren't born rapists, these two young men. And I just was so angry with him. I was outraged that he could say something like that. But he really sent me on this journey of inquiry. He planted a seed in my head, and I found myself really needing to understand how could two young men look to be so violent towards somebody else. I couldn't understand it because I do believe we're all born innocent. We're all born a blank sheet, but we get corrupted or conditioned by life. And I remembered something my good friend Anne said to me years ago. She was my manager where I worked at a counseling center. She used to be a midwife, and she told me that she had delivered thousands of babies and she never once met an evil one. And I felt the same way. And so then I wondered, what had they seen, heard, or experienced? And I thought, I've done a really good job at living my life, but they have to live with what they did to somebody else. And I couldn't imagine that would be easy. And then I felt compassion in my heart towards them because I thought, what a journey for them. I know what it was for me. And then the idea of forgiveness came to me, and I call myself really, I guess, an accidental forgiver because I plotted for years. I was filled with hate and revenge and anger. And I wanted somebody to take them to an empty flat and do the same to them so they would know the impact. It lasts for years. It doesn't last for one night. It lasts for decades, the impact. But I also saw if I held on to all that anger and hate, it was only going to harm me and my husband and the kids that I struggled to have. And so I realized, I could choose to forgive them in order to make peace with my past. And I guess I always say I'm not a forgiveness preacher, that I have to say two things very clearly. One is I will never forgive the act of rape. It was total violation on my mind and my body and my psyche. And secondly, I don't say that you don't have to forgive in order to heal. This was my path and this is how I chose to do it. But it really helped me to cut any ties with the past, any chains that held me down or stopped my growth. It really was an act of self-love, self-empowerment, and my key to freedom. And that shame that I felt for years and years and years, it never belonged to me. It always belonged to them. So that really is my story in a nutshell. So I never intended to forgive, but forgiveness was really what set me free. And then I shared my story with the Forgiveness Project in 2014. They shared it publicly online and they said, you don't need to put your photo, you don't need to put your name, you can be anonymous. And I just thought, I'm tired of being ashamed for a crime that was committed against my body. If it was a crime against your home, your car, we don't have the same shame. Well, why should I be ashamed? So I allowed her to use my face and my name, and it kind of has gone on from there. Every time I speak somewhere, I'm just invited to speak somewhere else. And as you know, I wrote my memoir, Unbroken, and it's been an interesting journey. It really has opened just so many doors to me sharing my story. But it really, ultimately, I've tried every therapy, every talking therapy, every body therapy, alternative therapies. But I think speaking out, and I don't intend that everybody speaks on a stage or on the radio or the TV, but sharing my story, shattering my own silence is actually what helped me to find my own resilience and find my own strength, because I do believe that we are all so much stronger than we think we are. And if we choose to, we can get past anything that happens to us in life, because I really believe that it's not about what happens to us that is important, but it's what we do with it that really matters.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much. I've spoken to a couple of people over the last couple of days also that are on this series, and that's the very thing that we've all said. It's about what we do with what happened to us. And I've stood back watching your journey now for probably, we first connected maybe a couple of years ago. And it's just been incredible watching the opportunities that have opened up and the things that you've taken hold of in order to bring your message and hope to just literally thousands and thousands of people across the whole world now.
Well, I know it's so hard for people to find their voice, and I'm passionate about shattering the shame, the silence, and the stigma. But also, I think when we don't speak, not necessarily about abuse or rape, about anything that we're ashamed about, or it really holds us back from living our most courageous, spontaneous, and bravest life. So I want to help people find their courage as well as their voice.
That's so true. And you don't know this actually, but you have helped me overcome the shame of when I was raped when I was 17. And
Yes.
It's funny because I've been able to talk about everything else that happened to me, but actually talking about that always used to make me feel so ashamed.
Yeah.
And after meeting you and your openness and willingness to share that just gave me the determination to be able to get over that shame for myself. And
Yes.
since I have shared about that as well.
Personally, actually, so much to hear you say that. It's lovely. Because you have nothing to be ashamed about. I know now that 100% of all rapes are caused by rapists.
Yeah.
Nothing else. But we know that babies in nappies are raped, women in burqas, young boys are raped. It's nothing to do with what they wore, where they were, what they were drinking. It comes down to the perpetrator who chose to rape that person that day. And that's it, nothing else. So we have to end the victim blaming and the shaming because we're not supported by society. In Scotland, the statistics are awful. Of all cases that make it to court, it's such a small percentage that end in a conviction, which you think, why would you come forward?
Oh, no, that's exactly right. One of the pivotal things for my healing and dealing with this for myself too was something that you touched on about forgiveness and being able to have grace with that person. Because as I was sitting there processing, and it was probably only about 4.5, 5 years ago that I actually realised that had held me back for so long in my journey of being able to feel that I was worthy of people's time and that I wasn't a piece of garbage and I wasn't less than everyone else, was sitting there and actually thinking that person has probably got their own child today. And they've had to live with what they did to me. And they probably have done it to plenty of other people as well. And my mind went to exactly what you said. I wonder what happened to them to make them like that.
I do believe that hurt people hurt people.
Yes, yes.
If I was filled with all the anger, rage, and hate, I had murderous revenge and anger, but that makes me just as bad as them. And that is not good for my well-being either or anyone else that was around me. So it's much more peaceful this way, much more peaceful.
Well, it's so great to connect up with you. You have a special place in my heart because you're also a messenger of hope. And it's just so amazing to be able to join up with people from all around the world. The one vision to empower people that have been trauma sufferers to be trauma thrivers and trauma survivors and to do it well.
Absolutely. And that's really why I speak, because I want people to know that, of course, there's life after rape or abuse. You can go on to have an amazing life. And actually, it sounds very odd. I wouldn't undo what happened to me. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but it's taught me a lot because I'm very nearly lost my life. So I'm so grateful for my life now. So I'm going to live it as well as I can. And I don't know if you know this, somebody once told me what hope stands for. I only learned a few years ago. Stands for many things, I guess, but it hold on, pain ends.
Yes, that's right.
It's perfect, really, isn't it? And it does. Everything it ends. Everything shifts. We have the ability, I don't have superpowers. We all have that resilience and courage and strength inside of. We just have to find it and tap into it.
Well, thank you so much for your amazing story and for joining us on Stories of Hope, Madeleine.
Pleasure.
And thank you to all our supporters. And if you want to be put in touch with Madeleine, just contact me because her book is incredible. Thank you to everyone and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Humans of Hope Inspiring Stories with Kerry Atherton. If this conversation helped you, please consider sharing the podcast with a friend or leave a rating and review on your podcast player. Thank you to Matthew Bliss for podcast production and consultation. and to Kintsugi Heroes for making this podcast possible. If you'd like to find out more about Kerry Atherton, head to storiesofhope.com.au, where you can purchase her books or find out where her next event is taking place. Check the show notes for links and information about our guest in this episode. And remember, you don't have to walk your path alone.